Hello, and welcome to We Turned Out Okay. This is the show where we are always working to help you get good behavior from your kids, feel seen, heard, and cared for in your life, and feel happy inside. And I am thrilled today because I am bringing you a conversation with a lovely woman named Sarah Scheldt. Sarah is an educator. She currently teaches second grade, and for the last year or so, we can confirm this a little bit later, but for the last year or so, Sarah has been doing some really wonderful things online. She's the creator of a couple of virtual summits, and it's been such a pleasure and such an honor to be invited to be in both of the virtual summits. We're going to talk about all of that today, and I'm just thrilled to welcome you, Sarah, to our show. It's great to have you.
So much for having me. I'm so glad to be on this side of the interview process.
Yes, that's right. Usually when we've had our conversations, they are for these summits. So we haven't had the chance to I haven't had the chance to get you on the show yet. And I'm so glad that you're here. I like to start off by asking, first of all, how you are and how things are going for you, in the pandemic. Now I know so today was an especially rough day, it sounds like, for Miss Scheldt.
Yeah.
And I want to encourage you to only share as much as you want to. But listeners like to hear how we are doing, how my guests are doing, and so am I curious about that. So how are you? How are you coming through this?
Yes, I am doing pretty good for the most part. As Karen said, today was a little bit of a rougher day. I teach a fully virtual second grade class, and there are some big feelings that are happening with just in general with the pandemic and not being able to go to school in what was a normal sense of the word. And so when kids go through emotional hardships that happen in life, like the death of a grandparent or a really hard accident, there are some really big feelings that compound the feelings that our kids are already having. So I'm coming to you after teaching a full day of Zoom and also supporting one of my families who need just some extra grace and kindness, and not just for us as grown-ups, adults, teachers, parents, but also how to support the emotional well-being of our kids. And so that was a lot of the work that I was doing today, is
Okay.
just through a computer screen also, which adds another layer of hardship when you're trying to help kids really process how they're feeling and how to process feeling angry, feeling sad, feeling like I just want to go out and play in the snow instead of being on another Zoom call today.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so today was one of those days where, and I have felt it coming. And so for parents who are listening, you may have felt it's just because we're in the middle of winter. I have felt a little bit of a heaviness or sadness over my class the last couple of weeks. And so I'm now starting to see those emotions really bubble up.
Yeah.
So,
I'm so glad you mentioned that, Sarah, because it's true. Um, I've seen this in my personal life. I've seen this with the folks that I work with. I've seen this with the audience that I have on this show, and talking to other educators and parenting experts. Um, we thought it was really tough, and it was. And it seems like in some ways we thought maybe what it is that we thought it was going to get better. And like I remember thinking, like, when it's 2021, it's going to be fine, we're all going to be okay when like, well, that 1 minute difference between
right.
11:59 and 12 o'clock midnight is somehow going to sort of fix everything, and it really kind of didn't have that effect. I've been thinking a lot recently on I don't remember who said this, but I feel like it was in a movie or something, actually, where no, it was not in a movie. It was a prisoner of war talking about somebody who was a prisoner of war for years, talking about the optimists, quote unquote, were the ones who didn't make it. The
Yes,
ones who
I've
would
heard
basically,
this.
right? The ones who would basically say, it'll be over by Easter. It'll be fine. And then it wasn't. And then, oh, it'll be over by July 4th. And then it wasn't. And they were the ones who just, and like, we're in this now for the long haul. And I think, Sarah, you're really doing the work. You're on the ground with the kids. You are like in those front lines. Um, and so when you have a day like today, I guess I really have two questions. One is how you help a child through the difficulties. And then the other is how you are getting through it. And because I think that second one is going to be really helpful for parents, because we're a little bit more on your end, right? Like
Right.
we're seeing these kids after Zoom school or between classes or something like that. And I need to know, I would love to know, and I'm curious how you are taking care of yourself so
Mhm.
that you can show up for the kids as well.
Right. So I think the first part of that is how do we help kids and how am I helping my students? And I want to really make sure that I am validating their feelings because their feelings feel really real to them.
Yes.
So I think that was the first step in, in just thinking of my little one today, where when he expressed that he was sad and he was angry, that I let those feelings be okay. That
Yeah.
I even said to him, that's okay. It's okay to feel that. And I didn't say anything more to him than that at that moment because I think sometimes we want to explain things or over analyze or talk to the kids and have conversation, but I think there is so much power in the silence and letting them have space to then share more. And so when he shared, at first he just said, I'm really angry. I I feel like people keep forcing me to do things. Those were his words. And I said, okay. And then I was quiet. And then the tears started. And he said, and I'm also really sad. And so, and then again, I just said, okay, thank you for telling me that. And then again, I was quiet. And then it gives him space to process and really feel like my feelings are okay and I can share them and they aren't going to be met with judgment or shame or, well, you should do this instead.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's important to approach kids with their big emotions and their big feelings with curiosity of asking questions or just saying or validating, like, okay, it's okay that you feel that way. It's
Yeah.
not going to upset me if you're saying, I really hate that I have to do your class lessons right now.
Yeah, yeah, like, you could take that personally, just like a parent could take it personally if a kid's like, "I hate you. I hate bath time. I hate this. I
Right.
hate our house."
Because as grown-ups, we have to ask ourselves, like, is that really true?
Yeah,
Probably not. Like,
yeah,
there's more going on, um, that again feels really real to them. So I think, for the people listening, validating feelings, holding space, and sometimes that means not saying anything
yeah,
in that moment.
yeah. I love that. I think as a very talkative person, I notice that I do have a tendency to talk over people or to sort of keep going, and I've really learned um, to give space, even in a conversation like this, even in a coaching conversation that I'm having, where it is the silences are kind of where the magic happens.
Yeah. Yes. And I think that's why, it's also, and I know something that you speak so much on is play and playing with kids and allowing play to happen, because that's also a time for them to process those big emotions. And one of the things that I came up with for this little one is, okay, what would you like to do next? And then I helped guide him to making some choices that weren't me telling him, well, why don't you just go do this? Or why don't you think about something else? I want, I wanted him, especially since he was feeling angry around grown-ups telling him what to do in
Yeah.
that moment, that says to me, he's not feeling like he has power or choice right now.
Mm,
So I wanted him to know that he does have choice when he is feeling sad or angry, which happens to be this situation, that he does have choice in what he can do to let that emotion move through him and out of him.
mhm,
And so we created in his state of calm, and I think that's the other important thing to point out is sometimes grown-ups try to rationalize or again explain or talk to kids when they're in the height of their emotional state. So we have to wait until they're calm because they can't hear what we're saying to them anyway
yeah.
when they're emotional. So when we were speaking, he was calm. And so now we're creating a menu. What are some things that you would like to do when you're feeling angry or sad? And of course, this doesn't have to just be a big emotion that feels negative. This could be when I'm really excited or when I have a lot of energy. These are the things that I can do. I'm going to pick something from my menu that I can do that's going to keep my body safe, that's going to keep people around me safe, and that's going to help me understand and process my emotions.
Wow. I the idea of helping them understand and process their emotions, I really want to dive in on that for a minute. I've been thinking a lot recently on parents helping their children make meaning
Mm,
and how that might have changed in the pandemic. Because I feel like
right.
things are so different now. Can we still help our kids make meaning? And if so, how?
Yeah, so I think one thing that comes to mind is Paula Katula is actually another speaker on, she's been on both of my summits as well. And she just did an activity and she showed me this activity where kids, and especially young kids, she asks them the question, where do you feel that in your body?
Mm,
And then she asks them to color in, or for older kids, they can write about it. Where do you feel that emotion or that feeling in your body? And I think that that's just another way for kids to identify, you know, when kids are feeling anxious, they might say, my tummy hurts, especially for really young kids who cannot quite articulate, that thing that's going to happen. I feel really anxious. I feel really nervous. I feel really uncertain. All of those things puts kids into that fight, flight, or freeze.
mhm.
But they can't say that. They
Yeah,
just say, I don't want to go to school. My tummy hurts.
yeah, yeah.
And so by getting them to say, um, or parents again in curiosity saying, where do you feel that? Sometimes and for me personally, I feel stress or panic or anxiety in my chest. I feel a real heaviness in my chest. And that is something that I have learned, that when I start to feel that, I then again, I don't go to a menu. I have it in my mind, but it's like, okay, I'm feeling this. These are things that I need to make sure that I do so
Yeah.
move past that. And
And
so
this
that's why, oh, go ahead.
well, I was gonna say this gets right back into how are we taking care of ourselves,
Yes.
right? And I think recognizing that feeling
Right.
is so important. So I have for a year now, I've had off and on I've had an earache.
Okay.
And I've been like, what's up with that? The night before last, I woke up with the most horrific, like 8 or 9 on the pain scale, pain in my jaw. And like right here in the hinge of my jaw, right in front of where this earache has been. And I was trying to open my mouth and it's clicking and there's just so much pain around this. And it's 3 o'clock in the morning, so I'm
Right.
panicking, right? And I just started to think. I tried to, for me, this appears to be your here. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I've been getting lots of migraines and stuff like that, but this was fascinating to me. And I really tried to put my observer hat on and look at it in an almost empirical way. Like, you've got these feelings. What are they? What could they be? And my husband was telling me that for years he's used a night guard, and one of the things that it's apparently helpful for is stopping like tooth clenching or
Yeah.
whatever, and
Yeah.
that can help your jaw. And tomorrow I'm starting acupuncture, because what my husband said was, he says the night guard is a stabilizer. He says what really really helped me was acupuncture, like to take that pain away. And I think different things work for different people. But when I woke up with it last night, I was like, it's okay. I'm going to be going to acupuncture tomorrow. And immediately I could tell myself, I can tell my body, I know this. I'm aware. I'm going to help. You know what I mean? I'm going to take care of you. So what's on what are some of the things, if you don't mind sharing, when you feel that in your heart and in your chest, what do you do? What do you tell yourself?
Yes. So I have noticed that when I am feeling that means that I am overextending myself, that I am spread too thin. And that is my body's signal of, hey, you need to do something here, or we're in shutdown mode. And I was actually just talking to my partner the other day that several years ago we were out and it was a very hot day. And I just remember seeing him in front of me and I said, I think I'm going to be sick. And all I know was lights out.
Wow.
And, and it was my computer shut down.
Yeah.
And it was just because I had pushed myself too far. Oh, I can do that one more thing, or yes, let me squeeze that in. And what had happened is I was so busy that day that I didn't eat. And I thought that the event that we were going to go to would have food, and they didn't. But instead of saying, you know what, I haven't had anything to eat, I need to leave, I was like, no, this is a fundraiser. I'm, here.
Ah,
And that was a huge warning sign. And I think that our body gives us red flags of like, hey, you know, you need to tune in. So now that I know that, something that I find very helpful for me is I find, even if it's 10 minutes in my day, to just, and I don't necessarily fall asleep or take a nap, but just to lie still and close my eyes. And sometimes I'll listen to music or a podcast or even just a mantra of some sort. And I am just still and quiet for about 10 minutes, and then I feel much better. And I have been making that a practice every day.
wow.
The other thing that I have, especially since the pandemic, and maybe people can relate to this, is I've let go of, does my hair have to be perfectly fixed? Like, is my makeup on? Like, can you see wrinkle? Like, I've just
Mm,
let go of the things that this is me. I'm working really hard. I'm serving not just kids, but parents to the best of my ability. And this is who I am, you know, in part of me, because I think that we as people have so many layers. So I'm like, you know what? I am, and I'm learning this, and that's our summit too, loving yourself from the inside out, of like, I I don't have to come with, this filter of, all of the makeup and
mm.
that
So
this is me on a Wednesday.
so what would you say specifically that you've let go of? I think this is really interesting.
Um, so for me, I think it's almost like, and I got this term from someone that I follow named Rich Litvin, who's a coach.
I
And
follow Rich Litvin as well. Oh my gosh, we're gonna have to talk after this is over. Anyway, go ahead.
and
Keep
one
going.
of the things that he says, and that this might sound familiar, you have to slow down to speed up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that really resonated with me of like, you have to slow down to speed up. And I had to think about that. And it was like, okay, if I want to go further and serve more and really feel like if I'm helping parents help their kids, I truly believe that kids make a difference in this world. And so if I can help parents and support them with their kids, then I feel like I'm doing something in the world. And so I had to think about what wasn't working for me in order to then really focus on what was.
Wow.
And so what wasn't working for me is listening to all of the voices. And I take responsibility in that I would ask people, "What do you think about this? What do you think about me doing this new thing?" And then I got to the point where I knew I didn't need to ask anyone anymore. I needed to take action in a direction that I was being pulled in, regardless of if anyone agreed with me, if anyone thinks that I've lost my mind. Like, I've had a career in education for 20 years and I'm trying something new. I don't know if it's going to work. It feels really scary sometimes. um, so I stopped listening to, I guess I had to manage my mindset is the best way to put it. I had to
Mhm.
manage my mindset and decide which seeds in my mind were I going to water
Oh, I
and
love
which
that.
ones did I need to make sure weren't planted.
Mhm. Wowee. Um, I've got goosebumps. I mean, and that is so I've actually on my wall, I've got 3 goal journeys. And the first one is think, pause, reflect, slow down to go fast.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, it's and it just feels everything good that has come so and then another rich Litvin that thing that I think about a lot is like, I I want to earn our family's living with my creative work.
Yes.
And, that's a big ask, right? It's a big
Right.
deal. And I'm not gonna be able to do it unless I can come from a place of doing it, if that makes any sense.
Mhm.
And so, I ask myself every day, "Who do I need to be today to earn my family's living with my creative work?"
Mhm.
And what I find is really interesting that comes up is the first answer in, like, giant letters is slow down, like, you've got to say no to a lot.
Right.
Sarah, I can't remember if I went into the hospital with diverticulitis after the fall summit or before it.
It was
Did you
kind of in the middle. So
it was
we had done our conversation and then we were getting ready to launch and you sent me an email that you're like, "I'm really sorry. I can't promote our work because
Yeah.
I'm in the hospital."
Yes, and I was lying in the hospital and I was like, "You got here, like, you know why you're here. You gotta something's got to give." And for me, that's why I asked myself that question. It has so much more to do that it has so much it's about so much more than the earning of the money, right? It's
Right.
about cultivating a life that we want together and really deciding what's most important and as you say, sort of narrowing, choosing which seeds I'm gonna water and which ones I'm not actually gonna put in the ground.
Right. I heard something very recently along those same lines that really resonated with me as well. We hear this saying, the grass is always greener. The grass is green where you water it.
Yeah.
So it's like, where are you deciding to water? Like, where are you serving? My class this year, we actually, and this was something that I heard from another person that I follow, is the word hope. Because every day when we sign off of our Zooms, we send everybody out with love.
I love
And so, and that has also been our signal. It serves two purposes, really. It's please don't leave the call early
Yep, yep.
because they can tell when I'm starting to wrap things up and I'll hear the little chime as people are popping off. And
Ah,
so So it's also a little management thing.
Yep.
It's also that I want kids to know that they matter and that they are complete human beings already.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we send everybody out with love, and we now have adopted the class mantra for hope, and it means help one person every day. And
Oh,
so if we can help one person, then we know that that ripples out, that then that fills that person up, and they can go out into the world serving. And that's really how I shifted, or why I started to shift from my role as an educator, as a teacher, into coaching parents, because I wanted to teach parents the things that I know work with their kids in the classroom. And I thought, why is this not a fluid communication? Why does it feel like what I'm doing in the classroom and what you're doing at home are separate
yeah.
when when we can help one another?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's why that's how I started working with parents in just different ways to help them with their kids' behavior at home.
Hmm.
Because I have 24 kids, and if I'm in a typical classroom, I have 24 kids who I have to manage emotions, I have to manage behavior, and for young kids, I have to teach them how to read.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because there is this sort of classic way of looking at the parent-teacher relationship, which is not one of partnership,
Right.
right? And I think it really is a good representation of who you are, that you are saying, "I want to build a bridge here." Like, I don't it's not serving us to be on opposite sides of this kid pulling.
Right.
And I have felt that both for listeners, I have felt that both from the teacher side and from the parent side. Um, Sarah, I think what you're doing is so, so, so important. So before we leave the idea of making meaning, because I really feel like this whole conversation has kind of been about how we can help ourselves make meaning, how we can help kids make meaning. I want to just share something that, and I will link to it in the show notes as well, something that I've been really thinking on lately. There's a musician called Yo-Yo Ma
Yeah.
who is just, I don't know, beloved by so many, myself included. And there was a big article about him in our Boston Globe magazine over the weekend, and he's done so much for people in the pandemic. But what I was really drawn to was, like, he is really drawn to where the edges of things meet. Like, he really feels like that's where so much interesting stuff happens. That's where all the cool that's where all the cool and I feel like that too. I think he gave words to something that I've tried to define and haven't had you know, haven't had as good luck with. But one of the things that I was able to watch that they reference in this article, he in the 90s, Yo-Yo Ma took his cello and went to spend some time with the Bush people of Kalahari, like the Kalahari Bushmen. And he studied with them about how they make music. And there is the Bush people were so, I thought, so open and kind. They allowed the film crew and Yo-Yo Ma to watch and film a thing called a trance dance, which is
Okay.
something that has happened in this people's history for 40,000 years. And we know that because there are cave paintings that the
Wow.
Kalahari people put on in caves.
Mhm.
40,000, they've been dated to 40,000 years ago. And so these people today are doing this same ritual that people did so many generations ago. And I read about that, right? And Yo-Yo Ma is talking about this is how these people make meaning in their lives.
Right.
And I'm like watching it and I'm like, I don't understand how that is making meaning, but clearly it is so important in their lives. And so I think I'm thinking about it now because very often we don't know what is going on in our children's heads. We don't know. We see those big feelings. We don't want to acknowledge them. It's hard for us because we just want to, like, have this be done, right? We just want to be able
Right.
to say, like, okay, go and play, go do something where I don't have to worry about you or about this. And I mean, I've had those feelings. I have felt tremendously guilty over those feelings. So if you felt that way as well, and you're watching or listening, I mean, I think the best thing I found to do is to be able to forgive myself
Yes.
and try again tomorrow is how I usually say it. And, but I guess I wanted to bring it up because the idea of meaning, I love those quiet spaces where you're playing with the child at the sand table and they're playing and they're playing and they're not looking at you and they say something really deep and profound. And you're
Mm.
like, "Wow, like, thank you for sharing that." And, that is a way of making meaning. I don't wanna keep harping on it, but does that make sense, Sarah?
No, it's so true because I think that as grown-ups, I think that I think it's a little bit of a control issue for adults. I think that we want to I think that we almost want to make meaning out of what we understand to be true for
Mhm.
us and from our
Mm,
perspective and the containers that we have created. And when we have a child who doesn't fit into that, we're trying to mold them to fit into our understanding instead of meeting them at what they're thinking about.
their understanding and what
Because
they're
I think that I have had students, unfortunately, when I taught kindergarten, who have lost a parent.
Mm,
And I had a situation where 3 years in a row, I had a kindergartner lose a parent unexpectedly.
wow.
And so heavy conversations.
Yeah.
And I will never forget the one little girl whose mother, I guess this wasn't so unexpected, but she had cancer for about a year. And the her mother passed and she said to me, she said, I want to tell you something. And so, of course I got at her level and she said, my mom died. Just very matter of fact. Now here I was, her dad, other people in the school were like, how do we have this conversation? How do
Yeah.
we support her? What? And she was like, my mom died. And then I could hear her in the play center and the kids were playing family or business or whatever they were playing. And I could overhear them talk about where they were going to work. And then the conversation went into where their grown-ups work. And then she just very easily said, like, my mom doesn't work. She died.
Wow.
And like it was just a matter of fact, this is how my family is. This is what has happened. And it was almost like you said, we can't see into kids' minds, but it was almost like she had such an inner peace about what life and death and the fluidity of that is.
Mhm.
But again, it's like we were trying to like put it in this box of like, how do we talk about this? What do kids understand? We don't want them to be afraid. And she was just like, this is how it is. And then she was like, but she lit, and then she said to me, but it was just her body. It was
Oh my
just her
god.
body that she lives in my heart.
Oh my
And
goodness.
so of course, like I'm like
Yeah.
in the corner
Crying. I mean,
crying.
so yeah.
But she really
Wow.
had this amazing, like the only way I can describe it is this like fluidity of there's life and there's death, but it's all okay.
Yeah.
It was really an interesting way to look at it.
My sense is that it's almost like she was leading you there, but while
Yeah.
she was doing that, she was processing it herself. She's saying these things out loud, and then she's understanding them a little bit better as she's saying them out loud. There's this idea that I think surgeons do this where they learn, they'll learn something particular about surgery, they
Yes.
do it, and then they teach it, and that's when they can demonstrate mastery. So she's, you can almost envision this little kindergartner in the housekeeping area teaching
Yeah.
others about what has happened to her and then thus understanding it more deeply or making more sense of it.
And just a beautiful, that was many, many years ago. Her dad remarried, and they just had a new baby, and
Oh,
they have
wow.
a beautiful continuation of their family.
Yeah.
Because when I had her, she was the oldest of three. So, really a difficult time.
Yeah.
But I think that that also shows that there's some resilience and that life moves forward And
Yeah.
and for this family, they were able to really talk about the feelings and process what was happening and be honest. I think that's also something that sometimes we shy away from having difficult conversations with kids because we are uncomfortable.
Yep.
And it's like,
Guilty.
we have to be, if we can be honest and of course age appropriate and developmentally appropriate. But I've been speaking a lot on how to, well, and the summit that we're doing, this summit that's coming up, how to have honest, difficult conversations with kids of any age.
Yeah, and I am so glad you got us here, Sarah, because originally when I had conceived of our conversation today, we would basically talk about the previous summit. We would talk about the current summit, and what this so this that means that this has become one of my favorite kinds of conversations, which is to say, it went in places that I had no idea it was going to go. Love that. And I think what I want to suggest for parents is that you maybe listen away from kiddos, um, just in case, because I'm gonna maybe share some things that you're gonna want earbuds for or something like that, because this topic is a challenging topic. It's the idea of on the one hand, it can feel so good, right? We're empowering kids around their bodies. We're helping them, but so much more goes into that, doesn't it, Sarah?
Yeah, so this conversation, I mean, I have learned so much from speaking to, we have 14 experts. And as an educator and again, a coach helping parents, I have been empowered to serve now in an area that I definitely felt uncomfortable, even on my side of the conversation with my experts. And so you will probably see there is a lot of vulnerability and imperfection coming from my side because it's a topic that makes people feel uncomfortable, but that's exactly why I wanted to do it because I think it is so important. And so what we have been talking about is really just how to have conversations with kids, adolescents, and teens about their bodies, about not the act of sex, but sexuality and knowing their bodies. Because if they're able to know their bodies, then they're able to have ongoing conversations about consent and about boundaries and about protection against, child sex abuse, which is one of the topics that we cover. And again, really heavy, really difficult, really scary um, conversation in some ways, but so critical to
Yeah.
the wellness of our kids. And then we round off the summit with experts on self compassion. And when you were talking about being in the hospital, we can go so quickly to the guilt and the shame of and the name things that we call ourselves, like how could you do that?
Yep.
Just having that common humanity that we make mistakes. And one of the things that I loved about this summit is I think, like I said, my vulnerability and imperfection of interviewing and having conversations came out because I was learning so much
Yeah.
in a topic that I was not an expert on myself. But I was so happy to provide the platform for people who really are.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because from the expert speaker being interviewed side, I did not have a sense of your imperfections, quote unquote. What I loved but I love that you brought that because it did bring some beautiful moments. Like there's one moment where we in our conversation, we're talking about the aftermath of I was sexually abused when I was 7 years old. And I think that a lot of our conversations centered on the idea of like, what do you do as a parent if you have been abused as a child? Like, how does that impact your parenting? And to get to that, I told the story of what happened to me, not graphically, but I did talk around it quite a bit. And one of the things that happened to me is my parents didn't hear me when I was trying to tell them what happened to me. Um, and so I felt very alone. And there's a point, Sarah, where you asked something like, the question that ends up coming out is something like, almost like, what do you wish could have been different? Or what do you, um, something like that anyway. And I
retake that. Like I had to cut and edit because I'm like, I remember that. I'm like, how do I want to say, like, it was almost like for people listening, when your child comes to you.
yes. And
uh,
well, what I love about that is that you didn't not ask the question. You didn't shy away from it. You just said, all right, this is going to be messy. It's going to be fine. That like, and I notice when I do that, um, I think I think people feel like a little bit more of a connection with me. And I think people feel like, oh, she screws up too.
yes.
Like
And
little do they know how much I screw
and that happens so much, and I hope that people are resonating with, like, oh yeah, that happens to me as well. It's like, I know what I want to ask, I just can't get the words to connect and then come out. The other time that happened, and I was actually thinking about this the other night, was I asked you something like, when people didn't believe you, did that make you doubt what had happened yourself? Did that make you
Yes.
like question, well, like if my grown up doesn't believe me, like, does that create doubts? And I keep mulling that over in my brain of like, I didn't ask that the way that I meant to. Like it came out really poorly, and that's not what I meant, and I hope
Oh,
that people don't take that the wrong way. But I think
wow.
that we're so hard on ourselves of like going over things in our minds of like, that didn't come out the way that I intended,
Mhm.
and I hope that the impact of that is not also something that I didn't intend
And
for.
I hear you. I actually think I think that's a really important quality for a fearless interviewer. Because we have to be willing to say things that we feel really stupid about, or that we, and then the beauty of it is that we can go back and say, listen, that didn't come out the way I wanted it to. Like, let me ask that again. And as I almost nothing gets it. One time I edited out the name of an art teacher I'd had in college because I felt really bad. I totally disparaged this guy. He was basically the guy who made me feel like a terrible art student.
Mm,
And that had me questioning an awful lot. But so I like called him out in my my show one day. And that's like literally removing his name is the only thing I've ever done, because I felt like I don't want I don't want this to negatively impact this person. Like and I actually went and looked him
right.
up. He ended up becoming an art teacher for children. Like um, he'd made some really cool changes in his life. I think he'd moved on from like being an edgy, unhappy,
Yeah.
art teacher at UConn. Anyway, um, but the idea that I want people to see and hear, like, I love that we're having this conversation in this interview, because I think this is where the real intimate moments happen. This is where the real insights happen. This is where people go, oh, wow, like, I didn't think of that. And just referencing that particular question, I remember thinking that it was a great question that a lot of people might have. And it was more than okay to ask it. I thought it was a great question because it opens up a whole different direction for a conversation.
Yeah, and I'm so glad we're having this and that you said that, because I was even thinking the other night of putting text on top and being like, what I really meant was
Oh,
there might be more that kids, do start to have doubts when they're not believed, or,
yeah.
I really that was something that felt sticky for
Mhm.
me, because again, in my own mind, it didn't come out the way that I wanted it to, or in my mind thought it could have sounded a little bit better.
Mhm.
Yes, but I do think, and the reason that I think I said that I asked that question is because if we tell kids over and over something is true or not true, then sometimes they start to believe it.
Yeah, they'll question
And so
themselves.
that is where, quickly firing in my mind was, well, if your trusted adult is saying, no, that couldn't have really happened, then in a child's mind, is there a moment where you're like, well, maybe not,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
because again, we going back to those seeds. That's a seed of doubt, and it's
Yeah.
like, if we water that seed of doubt, how does that take root?
And I think it's really interesting because I could see that, uh, for me, it was a visceral what happened to me was very, deeply ingrained, um, and I remembered vividly words, and I remembered, after he did this, he threatened my life, so, I remember that feeling. There are odors that I remember. I mean, they're like, I worry about saying things like that on my show because I don't want parents, but you've all got your headphones on, so we're good. Don't want, you know, kids to hear that sort of thing. And what I would love to go out on, Sarah, is like, I would love to hear. So first of all, I want everybody listening to go and sign up for this conference. You can go to Sarah Scheldt, SCHELDT.com
Yes.
to sign up. It's really clear. There's this beautiful video explaining like what the summit is about. It's really delightful. The summit runs from February 15th
Yes,
through.
and through the 28th.
Yeah, yeah, something like that. So it's a little bit more than a week. I feel like it's 10 or 12 days, something like that.
Yes, we have 14 speakers, so we have one on each day.
Oh, so it's exactly 2 weeks.
Yes.
Cool. And there is so much more than just my conversation with, in here. There's 14 people to help your child through things, to help you feel better within yourself, to help, to give you guys all words, to give your whole family words for body parts and what's happening. And like, it's such a positive and wonderful, summit, even though it is about a difficult conversation. And I kind of want to I think I would love to talk a little bit about, so we were just talking, Sarah and I, about, the idea that like, did I have doubt? Right.
Right.
And, I would love to try and give our listeners now a little bit of a taste is the wrong word, but, Sarah, can you talk a little bit about, some of the things that have been most meaningful for you uh, that have really upheld or dissipated doubts, upheld the positives or dissipated the doubts for you around kids and their bodies?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that I have loved about this is just feeling more confident in getting started. That we do not have to have all of the answers, that we just have to get started. And I think one of the things that I love about the series is that it really addresses topics from our young kids through teens who are dealing with more serious conversations. The other thing that I loved is that it is very inclusive. So we talk about how to support kids who are part of the LGBTQ community. We talk
Mm,
about how to one of my speakers, we were talking about pornography. And I have a couple of speakers who have addressed that topic because kids have such accessibility to being exposed to things, and how we can just have confidence in addressing conversations again with openness, with curiosity. So, our kids who may have seen something that you probably weren't comfortable with them seeing, that you can have a really open conversation. And again, asking them like, so what did you think about what you saw? Because it could be scary, it could be, uncomfortable. But learning, I think, how to ask questions from a place of inquiry was really eye opening.
a good lesson.
A good lesson. I also think having conversations around how to set up a preventative team for our kids. So again, it goes back to this idea of parents and teachers working together, but also finding your community.
Mm,
Because we have such nuclear families, nuclear families, which families are come in all different shapes and
yeah,
sizes and living situations. But if we look at families, of the past and in history, we had villages. We had everyone bringing up kids together,
yeah.
where if your kid was doing something and that you weren't sure of, you could look to the neighbor's kid who might be doing, and you're like, okay, together.
Exactly.
But now,
But that's support.
especially, yeah,
Yeah,
especially because we're so isolated now with the pandemic, if your kid exhibits a behavior and you don't have anyone to else to see or compare, you might think like, oh no,
yeah, yeah,
how do I handle this? And so I think that that is also the beauty of having so many experts, is because even though you might hear parts of information that are the same, it really starts to sink in and resonate and gives you confidence that you can do this work, that you can have these conversations. And if you need support, it's there.
yeah,
So I think like that's also something to really keep in mind, that you are not alone. You do not have to do this alone, and that there are people that you can go to and you can ask.
yeah. Oh, I love that. I mean, what a wonderful idea to go out on.
Yes, so thank you for, giving the opportunity to share this work that you are a part of as well.
Oh, it's my pleasure. We talked about getting you on the show. We had talked about that during the first conference, and then I went into the hospital and it didn't happen. But I feel like that means that it's the perfect timing for this now. This is a great time for this conversation in the middle of winter when we are all feeling a little low.
Yes, yes,
I feel like um, this is how we build that the structures that will keep us going,
right.
you know? So Sarah, I'm 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 trying to remember. So I'm gonna be sort of in the middle, right? Like my presentation is gonna come sort of in the middle?
Yes, you are in the middle. So the way that it just worked out is we have speakers who are really talking about how to get the conversation started, what to do when your teenage daughter thinks you don't know anything with them. Then we have speakers who are addressing child sex abuse prevention. And then we go into how we can take care of ourselves
Mhm.
and model self compassion and self love. So our kids really do have body positivity, and they feel, again, they can feel their feelings and not feel so isolated.
Yeah.
And as well, like when they feel their feelings, that they can feel them all the way through until they are out. And
I love
so they
that.
don't learn
Beautiful.
to push them down, as so many of us are working on.
Yeah, exactly,
Myself
as we are
included.
so many of us are working on. So if you are listening to this and it is after the 15th, uh, can folks still sign up?
Yes, so you can sign up at any time during the summit.
Okay.
One of the things, though, is that the interviews are only live for a short amount of time after they're released. But what you can do is we have an all access pass available. And what that means is you have access to all of the interviews as many times as you want to listen to them for a year. And so that is something, because I know people are busy. And also, you might want to go back and listen to a speaker a couple of days later after you've had time to think about it. Or
Mhm.
one of the things that I like to do is I listen to someone, and then when I'm preparing to do the work that they talked about, I like to go back and listen to exactly like, okay, how did they do that again?
Yeah,
Which word
yeah.
did they use? And so that's why I wanted to offer that. Also, in the All Access Pass, our speakers, like Karen, have offered some amazing bonuses that are only available in the pass. And so, just a few of those. I know Karen has offered a 30-minute conversation. We also have a master class on how to create a child sex prevention team, which I think is
Ah,
really great.
yeah,
We have resources on consent and how consent is really an ongoing conversation. We have meditations. It's such an amazing package. And what I would like to offer your listeners, Karen, is a little bonus of their own. If you are interested in the all access pass, I would like you to use the promo code loyalty21, and that will give you a discount on the entire package.
that's awesome. And it's so valuable. I think it's, um, I love a summit like this that helps you get to know other, other experts.
Yeah.
I have loved offering services like the half hour conversation strategy session. And it's so neat as an expert. It's so wonderful to feel a part of that. And it leads me once more, Sarah, to thanking you for creating it because
Thank
it's
you. And it is free. I do want to make sure that everybody knows
yes.
it is free to sign up.
You
But
can view you
yes,
can view every speaker from, like, starting on the 15th, so the
yes,
speaker that's on that day through the 28th of February, um, for free.
yes.
And if you would like to have access to all of our conversations for a year, you can get an all access pass, and there's even a discount. Loyalty 21 is your code. I feel like that's the sort of thing that you don't write. Instead, you say it. Am I right about that, Sarah? Like, we're going to say it here, but it may not be written anywhere. Is that the
That's
case?
right.
Yes.
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 Yeah.
So
Okay.
we're
So
saying it here, but it's not going to be, on any of the flyers that you receive. So I
yeah,
want to give your audience that special promo code
I love that.
for the all access pass.
Cool. And I will have, you can go to Sarah Scheldt, SCHELDT.com. Uh, or you can, and that's to sign up for the free summit. It's also to purchase the all access pass.
Yes.
Or I'm going to have the link in the show notes so that you don't even have to worry about like spelling it out. You can just
I
look
know.
down in your podcatcher and click.
There are no
And
one vowel in my whole name.
well, Sarah Scheldt, it has been more than a pleasure. It's been an honor to have you on the show today. I'm so glad we got to do this finally.
Yes, I always love connecting with you. Every single time we talk, I feel like we find another piece of information that we have in common. And so that's always a fun little discovery.
Yes, yes,
Always
from
need
knitting on
to-
and on up. Cool. Well, I am excited for this conference. I'm excited to people to hear this conversation, and I am so thankful that you could come today and be on our show.
Thank you.
I also have a special thanks to our producer, the man who, gosh, has been so helpful helping me understand what I can do, as a survivor of sexual abuse to raise our kids safely, and also getting them the most enjoyment and opportunities in their life without making me feel worried. So he is our producer. He's also the 23-time winner of the Husband of the Year Award, Benjamin Culp. I'm so grateful that he is in my life. And thanks again to you for listening, and we will see you next time.